Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to do the weekly metagame breakdown for the historic best of 3 format just in time for the qualifier play-in as well as the qualifier weekend. So normally what we do is we'll go through detail, discuss sideboards, stuff like that. Today, just life is very busy for me today, unfortunately. I do want to get this video out, so I'm going to do kind of a more fast version of the deck. I know a lot of people were asking for decks, so I'm just trying to get something out. I will be back with the regular cadence. I just have some housework being done right now that was unexpected that we need to address. So if you hear some banging or stuff like that, I apologize in advance. But we are going to look at Untapped. All these deck lists will be in the video description, so you can copy paste to your heart's content. So historic best of 3, Diamond and Mythic rank. For the last week, there's been 6,700 games. And in terms of the filters themselves, we have Abzan Sorin here. So basically the format is heavily predicated on Sorin being one of the strongest decks. Sorin cheats into play Saint Elenda, which brings into it a whole bunch of answers, just really insurmountable board for a lot of decks. You get left behind with at minimum 2 4-power creatures, one being a 4/7 lifelinker. You answer their most significant permanent, or you draw cards, or you just present even more power on the board as early as turn 3. The green in this basically lets you find the combo to assemble a team, think Demonic Tutor, but a third of your deck, or Malavant Rumble. This version here is not opting to play the Ulamog Emperor Bones combo, instead just using Emperor Bones kind of as a value play. Overlord in here as a way to kind of dig through stuff. Dedicated Dollmaker and Felia both allow you to blink and kind of scam your overlords or your ETB creatures. Vona's like a destroy permanent type thing, kind of mixed into there. So bunch of cheap disruption, peddlers, hand hate, all mixed into there. You see some shifting woodlands as well to kind of reanimate or kind of copy those creatures. Sideboard, you have both Calling Ritual and Divine Purge for the Luris piles. Calling Ritual is very strong against auras or energy. Peddler for hand hates, and then just kind of your Lotus decks, various removal options, hate pieces kind of mixed in. We have Abzan Yawgmoth, a deck that's kind of fallen off, but we're seeing a uptick with Sephiroth. So basically, Yawgmoth, 2 Young Wolves creates a loop where they can put counters on each other and reset the persist. So it creates an infinite loop of enter the battlefields and die triggers. With Sephiroth, you basically drain them out of the game that way there. And it's just a powerful threat on its own. You're looking to kind of sometimes nickel and dime your opponent for value. You have the Marionette Apprentice as another Blood Artist effect. You have a bunch of ramp in Gilded Goose and Birds of Paradise, Renegade Rallier. Since you can enable Revolt pretty easy, you can bring back stuff, plays really nicely. Birthing Ritual, Chord helps you find your combo pieces. You're going to see a lot of 1-ofs as just tutorable threats. Mid-range matchups, blow up stuff, activated abilities. Hexproof for your humans, so protects Yogg, an Edict style effect, and then just a bunch of removal and interaction. Boros Energy, so this is the Luris version of the deck, probably where I'm leaning, to be honest. So kind of the flex spots, I like more Voice of Victory over fewer Galvanic Discharges, 2/4 split, but you have Static Prison. You could also play Fragment Reality in the main. But this one here, you have kind of these smaller creatures that make more bodies behind that happen to be red, that plays nicely with both Goblin Bombardment and a Johnny. Notably in this format, there are nerfs. So Galvanic, Guide of Souls, and Oscillate's Pride either have higher energy requirements or a higher CMC. Sideboard just gets you some interaction with Invasion of Gobekhan. Containment Priest really good against Sorin decks. Bunch 8 pieces, and then some cheap removal mixed in. Boros Auras, so I'm kind of considering myself between Energy and Auras if I get a chance to play. I like Auras. The big kind of flex spot difference is if you're running Amped Raptor or if you are running the Hushbringers. I personally prefer Hushbringer, shuts off Energy, Sack, any of those kind of decks there. Shuts off Elenda's ETB style effect. They still get a 4/7, but you kind of beat them that way there. They don't get to Faith's Feathers your creature. Otherwise built around Core Spirit Dancer and Light Paws, both of which can tutor up or just draw you a bunch of cards with auras. Just Demonic Ruckus, Light Paws, get sheltered by ghosts, you run away with a lot of games. Sideboard's pretty clean. Hushbringer for anything with ETBs. Pithing Needle for like Sorin decks. Fragment is catch-all removal. Tormod's Crypt for graveyard hate. Izzet Lotus Field. So this deck here is looking to use Lotus Field. You have Stifle effects in Consigned to Memory and Stifle itself. Both can stop the sacrifice trigger. Deserted Temple also could untap Lotus Field, so you can net some mana. Then you use things like Pour Over Pages, Hidden Strings, ways to tap and tap. Through Artist Talent, you kind of churn through your deck, draw a whole bunch, eventually cast Underworld Breach, and then you wish for your kind of win conditions. There's also Ral in here if you want to kind of get the cost reduction. It could flip, give you some value there, but you can win with Tendrils or draw out your whole deck and win with Jace or Grape Shot your opponent kind of in. Sideboard gives you some more options as well, just in terms of finding your other Underworld Breach. Orange Chant sideboard can be a silence style effect. Purge is removal, Fragment. Blood Mog deals with hate pieces, the mix. Azorius Flash. So this deck here is looking to use High Noon in conjunction with just kind of tempo elements. So you remand your opponent's card, you reprieve it, just make it so they only cast one spell per turn, and then you get to draw, kind of break parity with that. You win, like Spell Queller usually has a downside when it dies, they get their thing back, but with the High Noon, they don't get to cast the second spell. You have like Purges, Aven Interrupters here, Talion's Throne Guard, another threat that kind of tempo bounces your opponent's creature, while then giving you a big body to kind of attack in. You have Jace the Mind Sculptor that can flip Tameo, Kalim in here as a way you just keep cycling. It breaks parity because you get the effect that doesn't get it back by High Noon, and it eventually leads to just getting a 5/6 body into play for free. A lot of text in here, but basically you eventually just keep drawing until you get a 5/6 for free. Timeless Dragon's another way to break parity, hits your line drops, and then you can eternalize it from your graveyard. Bunch of ways for like triggered or activated abilities. Clarion Conquer shuts down like artifacts. So like if you run into Affinity, if you run into Sorin decks, if you run into Mono Green, shuts down a lot. Consign's really good against like the Eldrazi decks. And then you got some just here. Selesnya Devotion. So this one here is looking to use Nykthos to generate a whole bunch of mana. Bunch of mana dorks, tap and tap with Kiora. Generate mana, you draw cards off Kiora and Oacaster Trailblazer. Karn board that you'll see here, and then basically just try to go into Cavaliers or Storm the Festivals, chain together a whole bunch of mana, play a bunch of spells, draw a bunch of cards, and then you can kind of combo kill your opponent, a Chroma's Memorial that same turn to haste out your team, or just answers to everything with Karn. Esper Sorin. So this is another flavor of Sorin. So same Sorin package, but this one here also has the Diviner Fates when you draw a discard. So every time you discard for the first time, you get to seek a card from your library with the same type. So if you discard a creature, you get to get a random creature into your hand. So it nets parity with things like Psychic Frog. You don't lose the card, it just gets the value. You can discard Ulamog to reanimate it with Emperor of Bones. Ulamog sees itself in exile, so you can haste out as early as turn 4, or actually turn 3 technically, if you can get the discard in place. And it just becomes 10 Annihilator, so it blows up your opponent's board. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a mid-range shell. Bunch of disruption, hand hate, sweepers, deafening silence for any sort of storm decks. So we have Izzet Wizards, traditional wizards with like Corey, so just an aggressive slanted deck. You have Wizard's Lightning, Flame of Anor for value. I like Mentor's Guidance more than Expressive Iteration, just because you're kind of hampered on mana, and Mentor's Guidance puts the cards in hand versus puts them into exile, where you can't necessarily always cast them for the turn. Swiftspear's Teaching is a really strong card. It's a cantrip that gives the next creature you cast haste and prowess. So you immediately get to haste out Dreadhorde Arcanist that can flash it back and make your next creature have haste, and it kind of stacks. With Dreadhorde, it's really strong because it both has trample naturally, but then if you can increase its power, it lets you flash back higher CMC cards. Your sideboard's just got like Snapcaster for the grindier matchups, some interaction, hate pieces, stuff like that. The Sorin matchups can be pretty tough. An early Elenda is hard to answer deck. So kind of the sleeper that I was going to play, some variation of it, is Rona's Helix. So this is an infinite combo. Some of them are playing VV. I have one copy of VV in mine. You don't necessarily even need VV. But Rona with Retraction Helix and Mox Amber is infinite cast, infinite ETB, infinite value. So what you can do with this deck is, so basically Rona, you pick up the Mox Amber, so you tap it for mana, you pick up the Mox Amber, you cast the Mox Amber, it untaps Rona, which then you kind of just do that loop over and over again. If you have Swiftspear's Teaching on Rona, it basically will give you infinite prowess triggers, to then you're able to flip Rona and have the trample effect on it as well with all that added power. So you just kill your opponent that way there. There's also Thundertrap Trainer, which makes your other otters untap. So I was playing 2 Storm Chasers talent. I was playing a couple Mutavaults. Mutavaults count as the copy as well of being an otter. I was also playing a couple Mox Jaspers because it's a dragon. It fixes for red mana that way there. But then you just kind of chain through your deck. You basically make a whole bunch of power, and then you can kill your opponent that way there. This taps on taps gives you +1 power, and then you have things like Thundertrap Trainer. I like the Storm Chasers talent because when you're generating a whole bunch of mana, you can use it as a mana sink, and then that will allow you to just go like return spells from your graveyard if you need to, or whatever it is in that case. Then just a bunch of answers, cheap counters, cheap removal, bounds, consign, flute for hate pieces. Simic Eldrazi, so the big mana deck. So using Ugin's Labyrinth, you kind of imprint it with a 7-drop for the time being. You get ahead on mana. Very strong starts are Labyrinth into Mindstone on turn 1, or just like Utopia Sprawl. Some are playing Delighted Halfling as another mana accelerant on 1. Going turn 1 like accelerant into turn 2, sowing Myco Spawn's very strong, gets you ahead. And then like Ugin kind of takes over the game. You have Null Drifters. Cool interaction is if you have Ugin's Binding in the graveyard, if you evoke Null Drifter, it still counts as 7 CMC for the second condition, so you basically bounce the opponent's entire board. So strong deck there. We have Karn, which is just another Karn board with a whole bunch of answers. We have 4 color Sorin. So Gen Sorin, so this one here, a little bit more combo oriented, so you're really trying to push to find the combo. So Sorin into Lenda or Emperor of Bones into Ulamog. So you have Assemble a Team, Malevolent Rumble, Faithless Looting kind of sets you up in that regard there, but kind of that Sorin package that we've been seeing. This Aiju deals with hate pieces, Culling Ritual for hate pieces or the Luris piles, and then just a bunch of cheap interaction. Then lastly, kind of a deck that I ran into a lot leading up, variations of just hard blue-white control. As like the Luris piles, it's really tough, especially like Auras and stuff. This deck's playing Divine Purge as a 4 of Temporary Lockdown and Supreme Verdict. Now these are pretty dead against the Sorin decks, but you do have some interaction, just kind of go over the top. This one's winning with like Fairies, Dream Trawlers on the top end, but just if you expect more low to the ground aggro style decks, these ones just beat up on it pretty hard. Limb for like the Flash matchups along with Emperor, Narset for kind of mid-rangey control decks, Rest in Peace, and then Vetoes. So that's it. Good luck to all those playing. Like I said, I apologize for not being able to go more detail, more granular, but I have people here trying to fix something in my house. Appreciate it. Good luck all those playing, and we'll catch you next time.